Okay, for people joining this live stream, we are continuing to look at new features for version 12.3 under development. And we're looking at some visualization features. We already looked at a bunch of these, and we are looking at the last two on this list. So which should we look at first, Roger?
Access object is the one that's actually intended to get, be experimental in 12.3.
Exactly. Yeah, categorical save that for last. It's more an open-ended, little bit more open-ended discussion.
Okay. All right. Access objects. Okay. So should I just look at the documentation page for access
It's a good place to start.
Particularly if DocuTools was working. Great. Oh, that might have been from a different. Oh, come on. What's happening here?
Can you look at the format menu just to see if it has loaded DocuTools or there's something really weird is going on?
It's not loaded, is it?
No, it doesn't look like. I mean, there should be a whole bunch of new menu options or menu items there.
Oh, come on.
Did it somehow blow away its preferences of where your CVS directory is?
Well, here, hold on. Let me just. What is this doing? So this is
try manually getting.
Well, this is an older version, so I can
Okay.
Let me just pull it into here. Okay, so this is just, I just opened it in an earlier version. Okay. Access object. So the fundamental concept is that an access object is like a line. It's just a graphics primitive.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the zeroth question is an access object the right name for it? And it's not a bad name. Okay. So let's start off understanding what an axis is. You're saying an axis goes from point 1 to point 2, so to speak.
I mean, not necessarily. I mean, so we have both finite and infinite forms of axes.
Okay, we could have a circular axis which just goes around.
We could have a circular one. But like that one that you were looking at with the point 1 and the point 2, you were actually on the infinite axis one. And so, I mean, the points in that case are just a specification of where it should be. And then it would actually draw until it hit the plot range, the edges of the, of the graphic.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, so in that case, you have a direction. Right, you have a family. Okay, so what is the design that you're proposing here?
So the design has 3 parts. The first part is a specification on sort of where the base curve is being drawn. What the line is down the road, what the arc is, what circle, etc.
Okay.
The second part of the design, or the second argument, deals with how do we connect a scale to that. So the 0.00 should have the value 5, and the 0.11 should have the value 10 or whatever. And then everything after that is currently designed as options.
Okay.
With the options coming in basically lists that form a collection.
So,
of
so,
things.
so what you've got to give is, Axis object has a path, and it has its essentially anchor points, which say this point gets this value. Correct?
Right.
Okay.
And so that gives you, the curve and the scale.
Now, in general, this can be omitted because it's deduced automatically from the actual range of the plot.
Well, I mean, it can be omitted in a lot of cases because there's sort of natural defaults. If I have a vertical axis, there's an obvious case where my vertical axis is just, the scale is just whatever the coordinate system of the graphic is.
I know, yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying.
Right. If you have an axis that is going, off at an angle, then there's not a natural one.
I understand.
Yep.
So the path, so often that mapping is defined by, so I mean, okay, if the path is horizontal, val1 is the x coordinate, right? Naturally, that would be the default.
Right.
If the path is vertical, it's the y coordinate. But now, in general, I mean, honestly, I see. Otherwise, it's a function. Well, you're saying you can just define it from two values.
Usually we define it for two values and then you can interpolate between them.
Okay. I mean, that's a simplification, but it's probably okay.
I mean, I can imagine that there are, that eventually there will be cases where it isn't, a straightforward interpolation.
Right.
But that's diminishing returns to some extent.
Okay. So let's now look at the path to begin with, okay?
The other common case is that you have multiple x or y axis, in which case, obviously, you can't derive them from the graphics.
I understand.
That's the point of having. Okay.
Now, the way axis object would work, how do you say where in the picture the axis? Oh, I see. The PT1, if you're going to do this, okay, if you're going to say frame ticks goes to axis object, then that defines then that effectively defines the path.
Right. I mean, that effectively defines it positionally.
Yeah, but it defines the path. So what's the first argument in that case?
I would suggest either automatic or omitted, and I don't have a strong opinion on that at the moment.
Well, I mean, we need to have an argument structure where it can be omitted.
Right.
Okay. So, okay, so that's the case where it is auto-positioned. The case where it's in the graphic and you just say it's a horizontal scale. Oh, I see. That's crazy. I mean, sorry. Yeah. Okay, whatever. Okay. So what if that first path thing, how do we specify infinite lines?
Simplest case is a pair of points.
There are two ways to do it.
Is it just two?
Yeah.
Well, that's magnificent. I mean, in a sense, this is just axis object. I mean, what I would suggest is you literally just do it because you've got this pair of points. Now, it's a little bit of a shame. Right. I mean, all this stuff of through y0, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, just skip it all. Just say the first argument is a directive, is a one-dimensional directive. It can be an arc, it can be a this, it can be a that. You're not dealing with all these weird, string names. I mean, there's a limited grammar of possible directives. So in this case, you're just doing, X. Okay, but the difficulty with this in a sense, then the natural thing to specify here would be, val one, val two for the two fiducial points, so to speak. Am I making sense?
Right. Yes.
Okay.
And in my design, the one that's in the notebook right now,
Yep.
that is one of the forms that argument would take, for something like infinite line.
Okay.
I don't like
your whole reinvention.
I know you don't.
Okay. I think it's a bad idea. I think it's not scalable. I think it's hard to understand. And I think it's arbitrary. But I do think
that may be, but it also means that there's, in some ways, there's a little bit less leeway for things to go wrong.
Yeah, but look. My point of view is the 90% case is going to be people putting it into frame ticks and so on. Right?
Sure.
Okay, and so if it's a double axis, it will be, there'll have to be a syntax for axis object, and what it does if there are two axis objects allocated to the same frame element. Do you see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying. I'm not 100% sure that I agree that in a multi-axis thing that they're all considered frame axes. Or
what else are they?
They could just be axes.
Well, they could be axes, sure, and you could put them.
No, which is not part of a frame.
I understand. So, what we've got right now is axes arrow, and then we can just say, okay, so in the case of axes arrow, which I think right now is just true or false, right? And we've also got axis origin, right?
Right.
You're not forgetting about those things. You're not trying to do one of these, we're going to redo it and ignore everything that's there before, are you? You have been thinking
I'm not ignoring everything that has come before.
Okay, so then don't, right? Your system has to interoperate with things like axis origin.
Sure. I mean, but it's starting out as a primitive type thing.
I'm aware, but
that's being used by things that, the axis origin won't be, an issue for those.
I'm well aware.
Yeah.
Look, here's what I think in terms of the meta design of this. Okay. I think point one, don't hack this design because most of the time these are going to be auto-generated anyway. See what I'm saying? Don't hack that design. Have this be a nice, clean thing which we can generalize, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then figure out, and it maybe doesn't happen instantly, how these things get consumerized as, for example, frame ticks and so on. And
right.
To my mind, the way this should work, axes, instead of just being true or false, right, should be, instead of just true, it can say axis object to blah, blah, blah. Which is kind of equivalent to just throwing the axis object. But if you're doing a plot, it's not equivalent. If you're doing a plot, they would have to be some kind of epilogue, which is horrible. See what I'm saying?
Right.
We don't want them in an epilogue.
No. They won't be in an epilogue. If when we support axes goes to axis object, it will not be a primitive thing. It will be, as if, like the current axes.
I'm sorry, what are you saying? Oh, you
I
mean
mean,
axes? Yes, in a plot, you'll be able to say plot sine x, axes goes to axis object or whatever.
mhm. And it will be similar as if you had, specified, ticks goes to, whatever the equivalent thing in
Okay,
the current.
so my suggestion here is that, and I think I should save this file somewhere.
I think there's a copy of it there from 2 days ago. So
Okay, well, all right. So listen, I think what we should do for axes, right? I think that axes arrow single axis object should refer to the y-axis. Do you see what I'm saying? And
it should
if you
probably
give
refer to both.
no, it can't refer to both. You've got a single vertical or horizontal thing, and that axis object is defined as being a vertical axis object in that case. If you want to specify both the x-axis and the y-axis, why not do this?
Because that's different from how axes true and axes false work right now.
What do you mean? Axes true and false just switch on and off both axes, right?
Yes.
Okay. So this is doing it one by one. I mean, if we say,
I mean, that one doesn't bother me where you have the list. I mean,
okay,
you can do axes goes to X and Y controlled separately right now.
how?
My concern is where you have one of them.
How?
What?
Axes.
Do plot with axes goes to true false.
Oh, okay, hold on. Oh, I see. Okay, fair point. Fair point. You have a point there. Okay.
I mean, it gets even crazier with like parallel axis plots.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So that's the thing we haven't talked about yet. But okay, let's talk a little bit about how. Okay. So presumably an axis object can have a scaling function, which defines whether it's a logarithmic scale or whatever.
Yep.
That's nice. Okay. And then an axis object can presumably have tick specifications, right?
Correct. Whole little family of options.
Okay. And an axis object that lives in a frame ticks would by default put its feathers in one particular direction, right?
Yes.
Don't you want to use, if you want axis to turn things on and off, shouldn't frame be the thing to turn things on and off for frames?
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. Well, we need to talk about that. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, right. I mean, you could imagine it going through either of them.
Yes, you can. But I'm just for consistency. If we do one.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, we shouldn't mix and match.
Right.
Okay. By the way, that tick wrappers, how to format labels, not a good name, but a very good concept.
Yeah, I mean, and there's, actually probably a couple of, that will probably have to split into a couple of things. Because you have some tick labeling type of operations or tick label modification or styling formatting types of operations that you can do just on a single label, and there's some that you want to know what all the labels are up front to make a decision about how the formatting should happen.
Okay.
So like as an example of this that is largely done automatically by the front end right now is how many zeros to put after a 1 point, depending on, is the smallest granularity 0.5, is it 0.25, etc. And it pads everything out to the same number of things after the decimal place.
Right. Hold on a second. Okay. Hold on 1 second. Okay, sorry, go ahead. Okay, what were you saying here? So I want to raise a couple of things here. So these values here, they would normally be based on the coordinates in the order in which they appear in the primitive here. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. If the primitive is omitted, if there's a single coordinate, if it's aligned along a single coordinate direction. Okay, let me just understand the cases, and maybe you've already dealt with the cases. You'd say axis object of, let's say, x goes to val1, x1 goes to val1, x2 goes to val2. Oops. That would be the case for something which is an x-axis positioned axis object, correct?
Correct.
Now, I could imagine, but I don't think that makes any sense because it's not auto. Well, actually, I can imagine this. I mean, this is an obvious thing to do. This is a way, this would be a specification of a line that goes from x1, y1 to, I mean, that's the obvious thing to do in that case. Right?
Yep. The question is it a finite line or is it an infinite one?
Infinite by default, I think.
Okay.
Maybe.
I mean, I think it probably is infinite. I mean, I'm just.
Okay. All right. So I'm just trying to avoid the case where we have to repeat the coordinates here in the val1, val2. But that's okay. So in the order that the coordinates appear here, so they will appear here. Okay, so that specifies the values. Now the plumage. So one thing that is different from the tick specification is the orientation of the ticks, right?
Right. So this design essentially transposes the traditional tick spec and names the heck out of it.
Yeah, well, the traditional tick spec is incomprehensible.
Right. Hopefully this is more comprehensible. And so what these options do is, I mean, you can either give them a value or you can give them a list of values. If you give them a list of values, then you're sort of looking at the first element in the list across all the options defines a collection of ticks with, similar style, orientation, labeling, etc. The second set of items in the list defines a second collection of ticks, so on and so forth.
I'm sorry. You're saying in the current, I mean, in your model here,
Mhm.
there is a single family. Okay, so you're breaking apart tick positions.
Right. So scroll down to the bottom of the notebook.
But why aren't you giving something where there's an association that can have for every tick can just say, I mean, that at the bottom level, it's just a list of associations that say position, arrow blah, style, arrow blah, 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 for every single tick. So you can, generate them with a program.
Can you type out a simple version of that so I can, or start to do it so I can understand exactly what you're proposing?
I'm proposing this is the position of the tick, 1.5. The label is, or I don't know, let's say that the position of the tick is n of pi over 2. The label is traditional form, pi over 2. The style is, text. Actually, I don't even think, the style is text, 11 point. The orientation is whatever it is, etc. That's what I'm proposing. I think it's actually a pretty decent idea that this is the ultimate lowest level.
That is the ultimate lowest level, and it's fine. I think it's fine for something that you're generating programmatically, but I don't think it's something that you would want to input as.
No, because it's for every single tick, right? Every single tick, right? But the way we can think about these other things is they are generators of a list of these associations. And that's how we think about them.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so let's take a look now. Wow, the position of the label relative. So this might say placed, blah, 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 blah. Or it might have an alternative thing that says, label offset, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wait a minute, what's placed? What does this have to do with anything?
For that is for axis label.
Okay, well, this documentation should be under axis label, presumably.
There's 2 notes above it is where it introduces axis label.
No, I meant under as in on the page for axis label.
Well, yeah. So I mean, axis label for the axis option does not currently support these. When it does, it will be documented there.
So this is labeling for the axis object as opposed to for the plot right now.
Correct.
Okay. So what you're saying is, so what I'm saying is, there's a list of ticks and they get specifications like this. The axis as a whole also has a whole bunch of specifications. Whatever it is. Am I making sense? Now, okay, so you've got a whole forest of options here as well.
Mhm.
Okay. Which of these are already options for something? I see.
Let's see. We have
yeah.
currently axis label, no, because this one has it as a singular. I mean, we could switch it to axes label and reuse the existing graphics, option name.
Perhaps not. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a question of
base style is not how to style the axis. That's wrong. Base styles are for, that really is a base style. That's not how to style the axis. That's a completely separate thing, how to style the axis. Do you know what I'm saying?
What do you mean?
Base style is for the ticks, isn't it?
No,
No, it's for the whole thing.
Base style is any primitive which is directly represented in the front end and has options, has a base style. Or any box, I should say.
Oh, but it's a real mess to say the line is green. That's not where you want to put, base style arrow green isn't what you would want to make an axis green, is it?
We could choose or not to reflect base style here, but you'll get base style whether you want it or not.
No, I understand that. I understand that.
Yeah.
Base style would usually be a line box style and weird stuff like that, right? That's not what these guys want here. They want something which is basically just an axis style, right? Which we don't have right now. Oh, yes, we do. Axis style. What is axis style?
It turns
the
axes in your plot red.
I mean, base style and axis style interplay with one another. It's in the current prototype. It works very well.
What is base? What's that?
It works very well.
What is base style? Doesn't it have to say line box options goes to whatever to get it to work?
So base style, if passed directly to the box or a box generating function, applies directly to, so it will, if passed to a line box, it will be the line box options version. If passed to a grid box, it will be the grid box options version.
Right. I mean, Stephen, do graphics of disk and base style goes to red.
Okay. And what happens if I say base style arrow section?
Oops. So if you had any text in there, it would be section styled. Assuming that the text box doesn't have its own overriding style. I don't think it does, but
yeah, you're right.
Now, the interesting thing about graphics is that graphics has a number of these base style is the big one, but it has sub-selector styles which can override the base style for pieces. So axis style is one, label style is another. And there are more. I don't remember what the whole zoo of them is.
Okay.
Tick style, frame tick style. Maybe that's it. I think there's one I'm missing.
Yeah, so graphics box and graphics 3D box are a bit unusual in having this zoo of styles. Most boxes only have base style or maybe, one other style associated with it.
Yeah, so you could also add label style goes to red, and then you would get that font and that font size. And actually, does label style apply to text by default? I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure it does.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. So most of the stuff before tick labels has very close analogs in existing system. I mean, I guess rotate tick labels is new, but
Um, rotate labels. Label. This is a bit of a mess. Let's decide what we would like these names to be, and then let's decide how, they map onto the names that we invented 30 years ago, 35 years ago. Okay. So what do we need to, okay, so we've got which ticks to include, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got styling of each tick,
Yep.
or each family of tick, or type of tick. We've got styling of axis, and we've got labeling. Oh gosh, which ticks to include, styling of, okay. Labeling of ticks, labeling of axis, right?
Yep.
Okay. Is that it?
Actually, Brett, for some reason it didn't make it. We need sort of two labels for axes, right? So for instance, units and scales, if we use that and the user uses that, it cannot be survive.
Well, in particular, the axis labels. Okay, so labeling of axes. Okay, both what the axis represents and multiplier / scales, because the axis could be in thousands, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Or meters, or
Right.
Or thousands of meters.
Multiplier / units is what I mean. Right. So this would be, goat population, and that would be thousands per acre or something. No,
Right.
unlikely to that.
Well, yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, another question here is like the sizing of ticks. Are
yep,
they
how long they are,
how thick they are, etc. And do they scale with the image size, or do they stay fixed? Like a font can scale or stay fixed, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So do you have those kinds of controls?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, default, major, minor, where are the defaults being set? Do you understand what I'm asking?
They are the global defaults. Right.
What
I
global
mean,
defaults on the style sheet or what?
I don't think it's controlled by the style sheet. I mean, I think it's just hard coded in the front end. Which, I mean, having, exposing control for that is maybe interesting, but I don't know that it's immediately, necessary. It's major and minor, that we've been looking at, for the past 30 years or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So, well, do you think you have a scheme here for all of this stuff? Use approximately n ticks, multiples of dx. Okay, well, that's the same as the ticks, the things that we have in ticks, isn't it?
What do you mean?
The ticks, the current ticks option has the same kind of choices, does it not?
No.
No.
Okay.
The current ticks option is like automatic, none, or you give a list of where things are, possibly with how they're labeled and styled and, you know,
All right.
length.
Okay. So one possibility.
I mean, we prototyped this long time ago, and it's been in use for some time where we generate and eject the primitives.
Yeah, okay, I understand. So look, my suggestion would be this very, very long form could actually be the new right-hand side for the ticks option. You understand what I'm saying? You could use the legacy one, but we'd also primarily document this form where you're just saying, this is what I want. These are all the ticks I want. Boom, here it is. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That's the full control. And everything else is overridden by a full tick specification like that. That makes sense?
Right.
Okay.
So this is
now,
for, you mean at the graphics level, if you want to, it's like an extended version of existing ticks at the global graphics level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Which is not axes.
Well, no.
No, I mean,
I meant this either inside an axis object or if you wanted to at the global graphics level.
Okay.
Okay. Various people are asking about two-axis plots and other things. The whole point here is you can have an axis that is any shape. You can have a spiral axis. You can have a circular axis. You can have an axis at 45 degrees. You can have an axis wherever you want it, and that's relevant. What are plots that have axes at funny? Well, I mean, they're nomograms to begin with, but they're also what has an axis at 45 degrees? Something where,
I mean, you could imagine like parametric plot. It would be nice to label the curve as an axis
Right.
for the curve case.
Go to the end of the notebook because there's an example there that's, there's a couple of nice examples at the very end.
Yeah, those two.
That are pink boxing right now. That's sad. Right. So that one is, constructing a ternary list plot. Using barocentric coordinates, basically.
something we should probably have as a built-in function, but
I know we have a bunch of prototypes. We're coming to it.
Okay. So in this case, you've got 3 separate axis objects here.
Right.
What are you doing about collisions?
In that case, nothing automatically right now. And
I think you do need a collision avoidance thing.
It's in the pipeline. It's under development.
Okay.
Yeah. And I wonder why. In this case, the tick labels are supposed to be on the other side of the axis. So.
Whatever. Okay. So, but the how would the avoidance?
There's something wrong with what Steven's seen here because the tick labels aren't even in the right direction.
Okay, so I've got the wrong version somehow. Okay. So you're proposing here with tick positions. What does this mean? Is this major and minor ticks or what?
Yep. Those are major and minor tick specs.
Okay.
So from -5 to 5 in steps of 1, from -5 to 5 in steps of 0.2.
Another thing we could do in the case where I'm thinking here, in the case where you're not giving explicit axis object, when you're in a plot, we could have something where somehow, the default. I'm just trying to figure out how we get all of these tick position options and things for the x-axis and for the y-axis separately specified. You get what I'm saying? Because I think this thing about combining them is very confusing. Okay. Did you understand what I'm saying?
Maybe. I mean, I'm sort of imagining that we're approaching our third design for the specification for the frame set of options. Because originally, prior to version 6, it took just a flat list.
What
It went around the edges in some particular order, like bottom, left, top, right, or something.
I know.
And then we switched to a 2x2 matrix of specifications that were left, right, and bottom, top.
Right. So what I'm suggesting is that we enhance that. We add to that the possibility of an association.
Left goes to whatever, right goes to whatever.
Yep. Yeah, simple as that. That's a simple thing. It just would save me having to look up in the documentation every time which order it goes in.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a simple thing, which I think we should support. Okay.
Right, and we actually do that a little bit so for parallel axis plot, which we introduced in 12.2 last year.
Yeah.
There's 20, maybe not 20, but 7 axes or whatever. And so it allows axes goes to a list of 2 goes to whatever your spec is to
fine. So we've already crossed that bridge. Okay, that's good. That's what we should do for this. Okay, let's just go through the rest of this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy.
Let's look at the options for a moment and just run through them real quick and get feedback on names and general concept.
I mean, I wish this could be called tick label rotation, because I think this is, or tick label orientation.
Instead of rotate tick labels.
Yeah.
To get all the tick things together.
Well, yes, but also, okay. Because I think it's not a question of do you rotate them or not. Right? What is the case where you're rotating them? Oh, I see. It's when the thing is a vertical axis.
Typically, when it's a horizontal axis.
Right.
Why would you
they
want
run into
axis?
each other.
Oh, I see. If they're going to collide, I just did that actually recently. I just had rotated ones recently because they were going to collide with each other. Okay, fine. And orientation is better because, so orientation arrow automatic would be, well, orientation none would be just rectilinear, the thing is
regular horizontal red text.
Right. So, okay, none automatic would be, have them sort of be the outer orientation. So if it's a vertical axis, they read down the axis, presumably.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, they are horizontal text. You read them like, you don't twist your head. I mean, you don't lean your head over.
Yes, they are. That no. That's not right. That's what the tick label rotation means. You do turn your head, right? Just like axis rotate label for axes again, you turn your head. The words read down. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
Right?
If you have rotate label on a plot with a frame and frame labels, then
Which frame label is it on the side?
um
You don't even
just do
know.
random word of 4. We'll hit all of them.
Is that right? It will just work with 4 like that. It doesn't have to be 2 sublists.
No, it should work for backward compatibility purposes. I wonder where that message is coming from.
Who knows? But there you see the Okay, so that's what it does, Roger.
But that's not tick labels.
No, I know, because we don't have tick labels here. Look, you want to see an example of tick labels that were rotated?
Yeah, for the horizontal axis, it makes perfect sense because they run into each other. For the vertical automatic, it makes a lot of sense to not rotate them if it's the automatic setting.
Yes, fair enough. I agree with you. I mean, like for example, here's an
But we
example.
could
of
very
one.
well rotate them like true or something. That's very good,
Yeah.
you know.
So that's an example of rotated horizontal
Yeah.
ticks.
Right,
Yep.
right.
Okay. So
So what does automatic mean then? Does automatic mean rotate them if need be to make them fit? Does it mean something else?
I mean, I think we leave automatic, a little bit flexible right now.
well, automatic for maybe we don't even have automatic for right now. for
Right.
tick
I mean,
label.
if you scroll down, I have a table of settings for the rotate things.
I mean, we even explored other layouts, which is like have 3 lanes of labels. 2 or 3 lanes of tick labels, and then every third label goes in the same lane. Every
Yeah, that's
third
weird.
tick label goes in the same lane.
But that's why we should have this specification, right? Because in the end, you're just going to generate the whole thing programmatically like this. Because the program is not going to be that ugly that generates all of this stuff. You can have mod, whatever it is here in the orientation. See what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, what I was talking about now wasn't even orientation. It's translation.
Okay. What about the thickness of the ticks? Do you have a tick style option?
Tick style.
Okay.
Right. This is okay. Fine. But anyways, so if we go back to the options.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have. I'm just going to go through them real quick. Axis label is a label for the overall axis object.
Yep.
Supports placed, allows you to put it at one end or the other or somewhere along this middle, etc. Base style controls the style of the axis object. It's going to
it controls everything. If you say orange, both the axis and the ticks go
from
orange.
the base curve to the tick labels is orange.
Yep.
Label style applies to the sets of labels.
Okay, I think there should be a separate axis style. Okay.
To control just the curve, or you want the base style behavior renamed to axis style?
No, I think to control just the curve.
Okay.
Now that's super confusing with axes style that we have right now.
Right.
And question, would tick style inherit from axis style?
If unset.
Yes. So if I specify axis style orange and I don't specify a tick style, are the ticks orange?
Do we have a tick style right now?
Yes.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Which right now inherits from axes style.
Yes.
Well,
I mean, I think that's probably the right thing to do, but it's...
Yeah, well, I think it is the right thing to do. But I think also other than the fact that axes style is a little bit confusing, it's probably the right name here. Well, okay, let's imagine there's an axis style that right now is not axes style. Do you get what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And it's introduced experimentally for this.
Okay.
Okay. Rotate label, I understand. It's kind of a gross name for this. I mean, it would be axis label orientation would be the correct thing.
Right.
But, you know, rotate label is a nice short name, which we've been using for 35 years or something.
Mhm.
34 years. God, that's a long time. Anyway, for one of these. Anyway. Okay. Target units, I understand that. For
Yep.
this individual axis.
Mhm.
And okay.
You know, it's
now,
just, you know, how to deal with scales and positioning stuff and all that good things.
well, wait a minute. You've got the multiplier at the end, times 10 to the 17 or something. And then you've got times 10 to the 17 in meters per second. And then you've got the other. What does target units do? It converts to, but let's say I gave target units and I gave a multiplier like 1,000. I didn't just give a pure unitary unit, so to speak. Would it then go times 10 to the 7, you know, times 1,000? It should do that. That's what we should do. In other words, if target units went to 1,000,000, 10 to the 6, let's say, then it would label the axis in multiples of 10 to the 6. Do you see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying. I don't think, I mean, it's a new feature for target units.
I know that, but I think
Yeah,
it's a good,
I'm just saying.
worthwhile thing.
So I haven't thought through that particular path yet.
Okay, right. I think that's a
So-
worthwhile thing. I've wanted to do that a bunch recently.
Yeah,
Okay,
let's
let me bring
explore that,
another-
Brett, because we've been down this path a few times. We haven't yet designed it in.
Yes.
Okay,
Um,
1,000, whatever. And I think it's just, you know,
factors it out and
yeah. And if it's a pure number, then the formatting by default will be you know, thousands S or maybe times 1,000 or something. Probably the more sort of internationalizable version of it would be times 1,000.
with or
Okay.
without parentheses.
Small and gray, I think.
Okay.
Here's a question. I want only integer unit. Okay, so there are two issues. One is with stupid decimal points in units, and the other was with integer units only. How do I do that? Never use a non-integer.
So that would be tick positions goes to a spec involving, you know, brace 1 brace. You say that you want your ticks
Yeah, I
as
get it,
multiples of 1.
Well, I think we might want something that says integers here
Sure.
as well.
We can translate things like that easily enough.
Okay.
But if you had 2 there, there would be multiples of 2.
Absolutely. What are we going to do about the trailing points, decimal points? 7.5, etc. That's a number form formatting thing, but that's an important default that has to be done right.
Right. And right now it should be handling that pretty much correctly.
Okay, fine.
You know, integers if able, and you know, pad out to a constant number of places after the decimal place. Right, you know, so 1.0 for 1.5 and 1.00 if there's
okay.
also a 1.25.
Wait a minute. Why isn't it just 1.5? Why isn't it that? It should be that.
That looks really weird.
Yeah.
I don't think it looks weird. I don't think it looks
Oh.
weird if it's 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, etc. I don't think that looks weird. I mean, it's what I've done.
Any reason you didn't say that 30 years ago then?
Yeah, because I didn't think we had as many.
Because what we're doing now is exactly what Brett's describing and have been doing forever.
I mean, you can see it on the frame edge at the bottom of your other notebook.
Well, that looks pretty reasonable. Maybe
Huh,
it's breaking.
it does,
somewhere.
doesn't it?
Maybe it's breaking in some particular case.
Why do you think it's breaking in some particular case?
I mean, I
Because I've
think I
had trouble
have
with
seen
it.
sporadic cases where it didn't do that, but I mean, with the
Yes, well,
exception of probability scale plots,
Okay, all right, okay. Listen, I need
you
to
know,
get to another meeting, so
Yep.
let's keep going here. Okay, we've got tick label sides, which somehow reminds me of sort of side orders of French fries and things.
right. So we have tick label sides and we have tick sides. And
What the heck
this-
is that? What side of the axis to place ticks? What? Okay. Tick label sides. Okay, what side of the axis to place the ticks? I understand that. Which one is tick? What? That's the tick. Oh, I see. Whether you want the ticks, the tick labels, sort of perched on the axe on the tick, or beneath the tick.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you usually have them beneath the tick?
It depends. I mean,
Yeah.
so like the frame, the ticks are, on the right on the left side and on the left on the right side.
Oh gosh, yes.
And
yeah, but really what you want to say is the tick label being skewered or not? You don't want to say, is it literally to the left or right? I think you want to say, because those are the stylistic differences. Is it perched on the tick or not?
I'm gonna have to leave.
Okay, so do I, but okay.
I'm just going to say I agree. This is, for me, has been one of the most confusing things. Especially when if you specify an axis upside down, then everything flips around.
Look,
right.
I think that what this is, in terms of, okay, so what is this? This is, okay, so this is basically a tick label position. And really, it's sort of a below above. Below above, or it's inward outward. Top. See, the problem is top, above, below. I mean, it depends. Are you horizontal? Are you vertical? Are you flipped over, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Right, which is why I use left and right, because I can at least, imagine an ant walking along my axis.
Incomprehensible, in my opinion. I see what you're
spell
saying.
that?
Okay. I understand that there's the concept of a. Okay, hold on. Well, that's a different. Okay. First
You're a
question
physicist. This should be.
I understand left hand rule, right hand rule. I understand that. No, I agree with you that. I mean, maybe it's clockwise and anti-clockwise, counterclockwise. Is that comprehensible or absolutely incomprehensible?
I find that incomprehensible.
More incomprehensible. Okay, so in the direction of the scale, well, what's true here? This one is right hand and this one is left hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look, one possibility is inward, outward. Those are names which mean the ticks are going to the innards of the plot and to the outards of the plot, so to speak. And this case is they're both inward.
Right.
Okay. But now,
And
if you
what
wanted
does the
to,
line on the diagonal mean?
it's picks at random. Okay, because that's not going to be defined.
That's what it was doing earlier this week.
The-
I was resizing a graphic and it was flipping back and forth.
okay, but in any case, so the alternative would be left right, which would have your meaning.
Mhm.
I can also imagine, inward outward is also to the positive direction and to the negative direction, right? There's also, similar to those, is positive, negative. And I can imagine it being useful to specify these separately, because I can imagine you want always to the positive direction, even as your plot, as you change your plot to be a plot where the axis runs the other way.
So that it flips from one side to the other as it turns itself around.
That's correct. So inward would always mean pointing towards the center. Look, I think inward means
Towards scaled 0.5, 0.5.
That's what I think, yes. Toward center. Outward would mean diverging from the center.
Mhm.
And now, if you have a spiral axis, I don't know what you do. You can pick in some criterion.
Oh, better. What about a spiral axis in a 3D space?
Well, at any given local point, there's a center. But I agree that gets really complicated. Now, in a 3D situation, does the left-right mean anything?
I mean, my plan for this for 3D is that it's determined by sort of your viewpoint, how you're looking at it.
So it's billboarded in some way.
Exactly. That
Okay.
you don't want to have an ticks and tick labels that the line is cutting through and obscuring your ability to read
Yeah,
them.
okay, fine. All right, okay. So this is an idea about tick label position. That's tick. No, I'm sorry. That's tick position. What we just talked about is tick position. No, tick orientation.
Yes. We're gonna have everything being orientation.
Okay. So then, well, there's tick label orientation, which is yet separate. And by the way, with this orientation thing, we probably should have the same inward-outward type options for all of these orientation things. What we were previously calling rotation, why not allow the possibility of inward-outward and so on as options? And left-right and so on as options. Because they all mean that you can do that for an axis as well.
I think I'm not sure I'm following that.
Okay, so axis label, where is it? No, that doesn't make sense. Never mind. It's okay. That's a different thing. It can be done with placed.
Yep. But like rotating the tick labels, from horizontal to vertical or whatever.
But by the way, does plot label work with placed at this point?
No.
It needs to. Okay. Does that make sense?
Oh,
I've
it
noted
makes
that for Brett.
No, not me.
Okay, I've noted it in miscellaneous. Who does it go to?
I brought that up, a few months ago, as a wish list item and scared senior front end developers.
Well, okay. We need plot label goes to placed. Not only that, we need plot label. We need some mechanism to have multiple plot labels placed in different places.
I guess I guess I always just assumed that's what labeled was for.
But you can't have labeled without a point. What I look.
No, no,
If
no,
you
no,
give
no,
me-
no. He means the V6, labeled of plot of.
No, I'm talking about. I want a label right there, inside the plot. Okay, I don't think you can do that with labeled.
No.
Okay, so that's what I want. I want something where you can put the label at an arbitrary scaled coordinate or not scaled coordinate in the plot, just text, without any. mean-
Does any plot label go actually in the plot? I mean, it's within the frame of the plot, but it's not like it's inside the
No,
graphic
fair enough,
itself.
fair enough. Right now you can do this with epilogue, right? But that's really yucky.
You can do it with Legended,
Do what with Legended?
what you were just describing.
How?
Legended of plot, your text, and whatever that position is.
I didn't know that. I thought it gave you all kinds of weird, sort of action at a distance legends.
It does that too.
Okay, but I don't think it does this by default. And what I'm saying is we need a way to get random text attached to random points in the plot. I mean, look, it's really like a modernized version of epilogue. Okay, separate discussion. Can we make sure that's on the list for a separate time?
Sure.
Okay, because I really need to run to another meeting. Okay. So let's see. So what we are still left with is perched or unperched, right?
That can be done.
Okay, so I've got a suggestion.
Okay.
Base and tip. But that's what tick label position could be at base or tip. Or, possibly some kind of number that is, as you've said, along the axis here of these things. You see what I'm saying? This is a tick label orientation, which we discussed. And now, does tick label orientation follow tick orientation?
By default, it is opposite.
Okay.
So if you
Tick
have your tick
label-
on one side, the label's on the opposite.
Oh yeah, but that, okay, wait a minute. What's orientation versus rotation?
Orientation is what you had turned rotation into.
Okay, well then this isn't the right thing. This is tick position. I mean, we've now got tick positions, right? So this would be tick positioning somehow. And then we've got tick, that's tick label positioning, and then there's tick label orientation, which is the rotation option. Right?
Okay.
I'm not thrilled about tick positions versus tick positioning.
And we could rename one of them location.
I don't think it helps.
Um,
Don't we already have a tick? We don't have a tick positions yet.
No.
Well, the other possible thing will be tick values, because that's what it is.
I would be fine with that.
Tick values and tick positioning.
Or just throwing out there tick placements as an alternative to tick positioning.
I don't like it. I think placement is not placement. I think placement sounds more like it's along the axis rather than. Well, the other thing we could do is call it tick rendering or something.
I probably want to reserve that for something else.
Yeah,
How
I think
about
I
tick
agree.
alignment?
It's
That's not
viable.
totally crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's viable.
I mean, somehow alignment makes more sense for the labels than the ticks themselves.
I still think it's not terrible. I mean, it's like you're left aligned, you're right aligned. Does that actually make sense in our left-right rule? No, it's the opposite way around, isn't it? If you're right aligned, that means you're against a right hand.
Edge.
Yeah.
Yes.
How about just default would be above, and then you could have center and invert, which would put it on the opposite side.
Well, you could say inverted, right?
Mhm.
That's not a bad thing. I agree. Or reversed. Inverted or reversed.
We've used reverse and reversed elsewhere, just generally in the system.
Okay. Reversed. But that still doesn't give us a name for this.
Yeah.
How about
Direction?
tick direction? I was just going to say that. It's telepathic communication. That's the obvious name, tick direction.
Yep. Inward, outward, maybe center. And then we can do, at some point down the road, allowing ticks that aren't perpendicular to the axes.
Right. Tick positions, I think, is better than tick values. I think tick values is weird.
Okay.
And tick labels is what again? It's the actual labels, right?
It's the actual labels or whether to auto label them or not.
I see.
Right.
But most of the time it'll be auto labeled, but it won't be. If it's multiples of pi, for example, it won't be able to be auto labeled. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, there's a certain argument, because that is such a common case, that we could have something like tick label multipliers or something. And we could just say pi.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, the other thing I was thinking is that for something is that tick positions, similar to how we added integers, we should add, a trig thing.
Yeah, okay.
Is where it's not necessarily an integer multiple of pi, but it could be a
Half integer multiple of pi. It's rational multiples of pi.
small rational, I mean, small denominator rational multiples of pi.
Yeah. But I suspect this will be useful.
Mm-hmm.
Where that's explicitly given. Let's see, is that a base or what would that be? Tick label It's not really a multiplier. It's a tick label.
Factor?
Yeah, it's a possibility. That's a possibility. It's better than multiplier. All right. I think you've got a decent design here. I think we've gone through essentially everything. Is there anything else you need to go through? I'm really late.
If there is, I'm not sure what it is at this point. So
Okay. All right. Okay. So this who is it Brady? You know where to get this notebook,
Yep.
right?
Yes.
Okay. I think we've had a few comments on the live stream here. Let me just look. N-dimensional axis objects. Oh my gosh, no. That are n-dimensional axis objects that are merged compositions of lower dimensional disjoint axis objects, as long as the dependencies are specified. No, we are not doing three-dimensional. We're not doing specifying a point. No, not yet. I mean, it reminds me of hypergraphs and things where you're specifying.
Yeah, hyperaxes.
Yes, you can have a hyperaxis, just like you can have a two-dimensional slider or a circular slider for that matter. Okay, this looks good.
okay,
Right, try and get it implemented.
indeed.
Okay,
So-
look forward to seeing more. Okay, anything else for here?
No, I think we're all we're good.
Okay, terrific. Okay, talk to you all soon.